Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call. Today's November 1st, 2023. There's a lot going on in Iraq and in the Middle East as well, and so I'm going to try to touch on some of this. If you're calling for the first time, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to listen to this call, and I would invite you to click the subscribe button and share our calls with other like-minded individuals. This is going to be a short call today for a number of reasons. Most importantly, we've been inundated with contacts, and it's extremely difficult for us to keep up with it. So I'm going to be manning the phones along with everyone else right after this call. And so I want to share with you the information really that I think is most important. First, by way of disclaimer, Trusts Unlimited is not the purveyor of the dinar and these other currencies. We're not advocating either the sale or purchase of these currencies, but as rather substantial currency holders ourselves. We're sharing with you the information we believe to be most relevant. Of course, our primary interest is a window for the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar, and at this point, I think that the dinar could reinstitute in country at any time, and we'll get into the reasons why right now. Simply put, Prime Minister Soudani and Alak, the governor of the CBI, have really put the pedal to the metal with regard to the monetary reform, and they're just pushing every obstacle out of the way, and they're gaining momentum, so this is all pretty good news. Soudani has announced that Iraq has achieved the security and safety that it's needed in order to proceed. He has issued literally tens of billions of dollars of fines to banks and exchange companies for corrupt practices. He has instituted mechanisms that will necessarily facilitate the decline of the USD, and of course the decline of the USD necessarily means the increase in the value of the IQD, and he's working with Alak in this effort. Regarding his representative Al-Shamiri, who has also announced that the U.S. sanctions have finally been lifted, and that was really key. International banking standards are being implemented, and massive fines for corrupt practices continue. Alak and the CBI are also working in a lot of areas. They're working on technical issues in preparation for membership with the World Trade Organization. They're implementing the new electronic system and specifically warning citizens to avoid using any cards that are issued by unlicensed entities. They're also implementing a platform to utilize the Visa Direct. This is an important step because what it does is it eliminates fraud, which makes it extremely difficult for the thieves and the corrupt officials to basically siphon money off with regard to banking transactions. The most important issue, though, is final passage of the HCL. The terms of the HCL have been agreed by all parties as written, but the schedule for approval by Parliament could occur as early as this week. And, of course, that would be the last shoe to drop. And as a matter of fact, implementing the HCL without a new exchange rate makes absolutely no sense. So they need an exchange rate. So basically every necessary prerequisite for the release of the lower denoms and float of the IQD has been accomplished with the final passage of the ACL. And that's really important. Now, a lot of us have been involved with the dinar and some of these other currencies for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. But it looks as though our long, long wait is finally going to be over. By January 1st, and I'm not saying it's going to take that long, but by January 1st, the U.S. dollar will not be used by anyone, including the government. So the reserve that they have in U.S. dollars is not for internal domestic consumption. It's basically to fund contracts, international contracts, and things of that nature. They can't utilize the money internally to fund domestic projects in the budget because, once again, they can't use the dollar. So the only thing left, of course, is to utilize their own currency, and, of course, that can't fly at a program rate. So the math is pretty clear here. The only option, the only plausible option remaining is the change in the exchange rate. Now, I'm not going to explain to you why we've been marketing our Family Asset Protection Trust package for the last 15 or 20 years. Instead, I'm just going to suggest that you go to our call. If you're a new caller of either September 27th or October 4th, you'll get a complete description of our trust package. A better idea would simply be to contact us to get our initial no-obligation package and learn for yourself why you're going to need this trust package. And it goes far beyond the change in exchange rate for the dinar and these other currencies. It has to do with a lot going on in this country and who's been calling the shots for the last few years. But I will be giving you that contact information shortly. I want to basically explain a little bit about why we're in the situation we are in this country and why any American citizen, whether they have currencies or not, should seriously consider establishing their own Family Asset Protection Trust package, because this bunch in Washington clearly do not like us. So we need to avail ourselves of every tool available to neutralize their efforts to basically thwart our primary objective, which is to be left alone and live our lives in peace. Now, when Trump took office back in 2016, the inflation rate was above 4%, and that's after they kind of monkeyed with the numbers. The border was open, although it's not nearly as open as it is now. The average annual growth rate under Obama was about 1.5%, and as you will recall, ISIS was running wild. And these things all contributed to the fact that the United States of America said, you know what, why not give Donald Trump a chance? He's not a career politician. He's a businessman. What can we lose? So Trump was elected. But when Trump left office, what did we have? We had an inflation rate of 1.4%, less than a third of what it was when he took office. He had the border, for the first time in decades, tight as a snare drum. His average annual growth rate, even with COVID, was nearly 5%. And in his first year in office, he virtually eradicated ISIS. And, of course, the one achievement which all of his detractors said was literally impossible was he was ending foreign wars, and he initiated what he called the Abraham Accords, peace treaties between Israel and other Arab nations for the first time literally in decades. So this is, of course, all good news. But despite all of that, and for reasons that I don't really want to get into, in 2020 we ended up with Joe Biden, a feckless, talentless, mindless career politician. And what have we gotten since then? Well, thanks to $6 to $7 trillion in new printed money, we have an inflation rate that's double-digit. They try to tell us it's 3 or 4%, but anyone that goes to the grocery store or pays their heating bill knows that it's not 3% or 4%. We have an open border, the worst in history. It's estimated that between 7 and 8 million people have entered this country illegally. We don't know who they are, where they came from, or why they're really here. If just 1% of those individuals are military-trained people from other nations, that's 70 to 80,000 man standing army inside the gates in our country. Now, that's a worst-case scenario. I understand that. But given what's going on in the Middle East, It's certainly something we have to understand. An open border is not something any sovereign nation wants. It's a national security issue. But it seems as though what's going on is the destruction of the middle class. And how do you destroy the middle class? With inflation and with taxes. Enter the new 87,000 IRS agents that are about to be funded. Now, we're told we need those 87,000 agents in order to audits of billionaires. There are 752 billionaires in the United States. If every one of them is cheating on their taxes, they don't need 87,000 agents to audit them. So they're going after the middle class. It's pretty clear that's what's happening here. But there's something else, too. I think, and this is just my opinion, I think one of the reasons that they've hired these 87,000 agents is in anticipation of the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar and these other currencies. It's estimated that between 10 and 12 million Americans hold dinar and or other pre-valued currencies. That's 10 or 12 million individuals after these currencies revalue that are not going to vote for higher taxes, more regulation, and bigger government. So these people need to be monitored. And the way to do that is to hassle them with IRS agents. Lastly, we have the situation in the Middle East. And a lot of people have contacted me because they're concerned that this thing's going to blow up and it's going to stop all of the progress in Iraq with regard to their currency and, of course, some of the other currencies as well. In my opinion, I do not think what's going on in the Middle East is going to stop the revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies. One of the reasons I won't is that the federal government holds between 4 and 5 trillion dinar, so the revaluation of that currency from their standpoint is a good thing. But I don't think that they're going to be able to stop what's coming because it's bigger than the Middle East. As bad as it is in the Middle East, we're looking at a transition from the fiat-based currency to Basel-compliant currencies, meaning they're commodity-backed. And this process I don't think can be stopped, even though the central banks don't like it. It's not going to be stopped. Now, of course, the issue of the Middle East is complicated historically, but how we got here from the Abraham Accords is very, very simple. Joe Biden, either because he just stubbornly wanted to reverse anything Trump did or because they have another agenda, decided that he would not enforce the sanctions on Iran. And Joe Biden, as far as I'm concerned, is Barack Obama's sock puppet. And this is what Obama was doing with Iran. And so Joe Biden's just following suit. But we hear a lot about these $6 billion that's in Yemen that the United States has frozen. That's a distraction. The issue is that because these sanctions that Trump placed on Iran were not enforced, Iran was able to profit to the extent of $90 to $100 billion from the sale of their oil to who? To China, our number one geopolitical enemy. And what else did Iran do with that money? Well, they funded Hamas in the Gaza Strip. They funded Hezbollah in Syria. They funded the Houthis in Yemen. And he has reversed the number one geopolitical objective of the United States since the end of the Cold War, namely to ensure that Russia and China would never ally themselves against the West and the United States. So Joe Biden, in a matter of 2.5, 3 years, has managed to blow up the United States economy and our entire geopolitical effort for the last 40 years. I just don't know how it can get any worse. The only good news from our perspective is that when these currencies revalue, we're going to be able to go to the bank. We're going to be able to exchange the currency. For those of you that are smart enough to establish a family asset protection trust, you're going to be able to protect that wealth. Your privacy will be protected. That wealth will be protected from civil litigation. You're going to be able to transition to a lot of other ways to invest that take the money out of the hands of the central bank. And, of course, if they do succeed with the central bank digital currency, I was very worried about that, but I'm beginning to think that it's not going to happen. If it should happen, and those of you that have listened to our calls know we have a strategy for being able to have the liquidity we need in banks without having to be part of the central bank digital currency system. There are ways we can circumvent that, and I'm not going to get into that today. Basically, I have three things to say here for today. First, that we are closer than we've ever been to the day when we go to the bank to exchange our currencies. Second, the situation in the Middle East, in my opinion, is not going to affect the reinstatement and revaluation of the dinar and some of these other currencies. And again, third, if you will contact us to get our initial no obligation package, you will learn how you can protect yourself, your privacy from civil litigation, from the government intrusion into your personal affairs, which are none of their business, how you can minimize taxes, how you can circumvent utilizing the central bank digital currency if that should ever come into fruition, and how you can transition to income-producing tangible assets that will allow you not only to avoid the problem of inflation, but actually take advantage of it and grow your wealth. Now, you can contact us by going to our web, which is Trusts with an S, Unlimited LLC at gmail.com. If you'd like to order one of our initial no obligation package, you can do so by email or by phone. Our email address is Trusts with an S, Unlimited LLC at gmail.com, and our phone service is 307-274-4122. Contact us. We'll get our initial package out to you right away. It does contain everything you need if you wish to proceed with the establishment of your family asset protection trust, but you're under no obligation to do so. You can review the package. It has a lot of information about us, about the currencies, about these trusts. If you have any questions, you can contact us directly. We'll be happy to assist you. There will be no consultation fee. One other thing I'd like to mention. About 2 years ago, a little over that, when Joe Biden was elected and he was making a lot of changes, politics really entered our conversations. And so we began to include that in our calls. Well, evidently, YouTube didn't like that, so our calls were mysteriously suspended. Well, through a series of contacts, communications, and, frankly, threats, we made it clear that as American citizens, we have an absolute right to express our opinion. And since they had no problem allowing pro-Biden communications to be out there, they can't do what they were doing. I don't know what the internal discussions were, but to make a long story short, we were back up. Well, of course, we got back into some political discussions in the last few weeks, and YouTube's up to their little games again. So we're working with that right now to resolve it. But in order to listen to the replay for our call, as a matter of fact, I'll give you all the numbers so that hopefully if this call gets through, people can record it. To listen to our live calls, it's 720-716-7300. The access code is 739394#. In order to avoid the nonsense with YouTube, and I think we're still up on Rumble, but in order to avoid the nonsense with YouTube, our playback number is 605-313-5163, and you would use the same access code, which is 739394#. That way you can listen to the replay, and I hope it will be up as soon as possible after this call. Again, I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to this call. Again, if you're calling in for the first time, I strongly suggest you go to our call of September 27th or October 4th. If you really want to understand what the hell's going on planet Earth, I strongly suggest you go to our call of March 1st of this year, because we go into the nearly 500-year history, nearly 700-year history of the central bank system, which in my humble opinion is the cause of just about every problem economically we face. Our next call is, of course, scheduled for next Wednesday. Certainly, if something of dramatic nature were to happen between now and then, we'll try to schedule we'll try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency conference call. But failing that, we will be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Thanks so much for listening. Sorry for some of the inconvenience, and sorry for the shortness of this call. But things being what they are, every application for a trust package must be processed immediately, because in our opinion, good news could hit at any time. Thanks so much for listening, everyone, and have a great week.